If it were up to me, I would probably saute the mushrooms first, but we'll just do what it says. Hey, I'm Christy with 12 Tomatoes, and I'm here working on the Recipe Tin project, which is a project where I cook an old vintage recipe from this recipe tin. Today, we're working on Simple Salisbury Steak, which sounds pretty good. I've actually never had Salisbury steak. I don't know why. I'm not the biggest fan of mushrooms, so I guess it wouldn't be my first choice. But it looks like a lovely vintage recipe, and I am excited to try it, despite the mushrooms. Here's the card. It is just on a basic index card. It has really nice script, and the ingredients are listed out on the front and the directions on the back. So it's pretty straightforward. It looks pretty easy to follow. There's no decoration or embellishments like there are on some of the other ones. Some have like chickens or cooking stoves, all sorts of fun stuff. But basic is great too. The deal with Salisbury steak is you're making a steak equivalent with ground beef, so it's more economical. And you fill it out with some other stuff. I think usually it's more of a beef broth situation with onions and mushrooms, but this is a true vintage recipe, and so it uses condensed cream of mushroom soup, which has its place, and hopefully it'll be good. It starts with a pound of ground beef, which I have here in this bowl, and then it calls for you to mix thoroughly a 1/4 cup of the soup, beef, breadcrumbs, egg, and onion. It's a 1/3 cup of dry breadcrumbs and a 1/4 cup of finely chopped onion. We'll have the actual recipe link below the video, so if you do want to make this on your own or follow it, it'll be a lot easier to do that way because you can just read it. Okay, beef, a 1/4 cup of soup. I got it. Let's see, a 1/4 cup, so that's not a ton in there, but the rest goes in the sauce. That makes it really simple though. There's no salt or pepper or garlic or Worcestershire or anything. I guess this recipe is mainly relying on the soup and the onion for flavor. 1/4 cup soup, beef, breadcrumbs, 1/3 cup of breadcrumbs. I happen to have the Italian flavored one, so I'm using that. 1 beaten egg from my chickens. And how much onion was it? A 1/4 cup finely chopped onion. So that's it for the patties. It doesn't say to season them anymore, so I'm not going to. And then you just mix all of that together and form it into 6 patties. Shape firmly into 6 patties. The rest of the recipe, you're just browning these up in a skillet and then simmering it with some mushrooms and the rest of the soup. So the soup is the liquid that's gonna form the gravy that goes with these. Okay, that's pretty well mixed, so I'm just going to form it into 6 patties, which seems pretty small, but I guess you can eat more than one. I'm just dividing it up equally right now, and then I'll shape it. Maybe I should have gotten a plate, but I'll just kind of place these in the bowl. And my onion could have been a little bit finer. All right, the patties are made, and then the next step says to brown them in a skillet over medium, a few at a time, so they don't crowd the pan. So I've got 3 in there now, and we'll just start browning them on both sides. Then you spoon off the fat, remove them to a plate, add the soup and the mushrooms, and then return the patties to the skillet and let them simmer in that sauce. I know this is a fish spatula, but I like to use it for so many things. Pancakes, burgers, it works great. Since it's slightly curved, it really helps you get underneath the food. It says after browning to drain any fat, but I haven't had any excess fat, so I'm going to skip that step since it's not possible. I must have used a leaner ground beef than the person who wrote the recipe. These are pretty brown, so I'm gonna pull them out. I broke one. Whoops. There we go. We've still got the skillet over medium heat, and it says to stir in the remaining soup and mushrooms, return patties to skillet. If it were up to me, I would probably saute the mushrooms first, but we'll just do what it says. That made an alarming noise. That is really thick and bubbled up when I put it in. I would suggest maybe lowering the heat. And you know what? It calls for cream of mushroom soup, but it doesn't say condensed. And I used condensed, so now I'm worried that either I was supposed to add the water or use regular cream of mushroom soup in the first place. It's looking a little too thick. Let me see if I can show you. So I'm gonna actually add a little bit of water just in case. That's the fun of these old recipe cards. If you're using a cookbook or a recipe that's been tested a bunch and sort of have standards of how it's written out, then you usually have a better idea of the exact ingredient you're supposed to use, but sometimes you don't really hear, and it's kind of guesswork. That looks a little better. I'm gonna put the patties back in, and then if need be, I'll thin it out a little bit. And maybe the meat will release some juice too. It made it in the pan and it didn't break. Reduce heat to low, cover, simmer 20 minutes or until done, turning occasionally. So I'm gonna leave the thickness how it is for now with the soup, and I'll just check on it in a few minutes and add some more water if I need to. Oh, and you're supposed to turn them occasionally. I might have just said that. The sauce actually looks okay. I think it did need that little bit of initial water, but it's not drying up, nothing's burning, so we're good. All right, so it's been about 20 minutes on the patties. I checked the temperature to make sure they're cooked through and they're good to go, so we can pull them off. I did thin it out with a little bit more water, but it looks pretty good, if you can see. So I'll put that in some sort of serving dish and we'll give it a try and see how it is. So here is the final Salisbury steak. Basically looks like hamburgers with some mushrooms and gravy. I plated up this little one for me to try. I didn't make them terribly even, but that's okay. So as I mentioned, I don't love mushrooms. I don't mind the flavor, it's just the texture bothers me. So we'll see. It's actually really good. Very savory, plenty salty, even though it didn't have you add any additional salt or pepper. Yeah, great recipe. Simple Salisbury steak. Highly recommend. Give this one a try. It's really easy. It's just a few ingredients and it's pretty delicious. Oh, and I'm supposed to tell you to subscribe. So definitely subscribe. I know for a fact in that recipe tin, there is a recipe where you just bake a can of ham in the can 2 times. And you wouldn't want to miss that. And if you subscribe, you won't. Happy cooking.